Hey geometry students, this is Miss Lindell. For today's video, you need to have your 3.4, 3.5 brand new packet out in front of you. We're going to be doing 3.5 day 1 notes in this, which is slopes of parallel and perpendicular lines. So we want to be able to find slopes of lines and decide if they are parallel or perpendicular or neither of those things. So go ahead and open up to the first page of notes. Okay, so first, in order to find out if lines are parallel or perpendicular, we need to be able to find their slopes. So you've probably done slope in algebra, but just as a quick refresher, the slope formula, slope is usually m if you're talking about general forms and things like that. For any 2 points, x1, y1 and x2, y2, the slope between them is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So it's the change in the y values over the change in the x values. So for example, we're going to find the slope between the points -3, 7 and 6, 3. So first we're going to label our coordinates x1, y1, x2, y2. Then we're going to go y2 minus y1 on top, so 3 minus 7. And then on the bottom, we're going to have x2 minus x1, so 6 minus -3. Okay, so on top, 3 minus 7 is -4. 6 minus -3, well, minus and negative is like adding. So 6 minus -3 is really 6 plus 3, which is 9. So our slope between these 2 points is -4/9. Okay, so take a moment, pause the video, and try this one real quick on your own. When you restart the video, I will show how it's done and you can check your work. Okay, so hopefully you paused the video and found the slope between these 2 points. To check it, labeling our points x1, y1, x2, y2. y2 minus y1 on top, so -1 minus 5. x2 minus x1, so 0 minus -3 on the bottom. -1 minus 5 is -6. 0 minus -3 is like saying 0 plus 3. So that's 3. And in this case, since the fraction does reduce, -6 divided by 3, that reduces to -2. So our slope for this one is -2. If it's a fraction and you can reduce it, you should. Okay, so now that we've refreshed our memories on finding a slope, we want to talk about what happens when they're parallel versus perpendicular slopes. So the parallel lines, if 2 lines are parallel, they have the same slope. And then perpendicular lines have negative reciprocal slopes. Negative reciprocal slopes. So the parallel line one is easy enough, but negative reciprocal is something that's a little bit different than we've seen before. Negative reciprocal, in order to find out if something is a negative reciprocal, you have to flip the fraction and change the sign. So for example, the negative reciprocal of 3/4, well, to flip the fraction, I would make it 4/3. To change the sign, I would make it negative. So 3/4 and -4/3 are negative reciprocals. The negative reciprocal of 5. Well, 5 as a fraction is really 5 over 1, right? So if I was to flip this fraction, I'd get 1/5. And then to change the sign, it would be -1/5. So 5 and -1/5 are negative reciprocals. Go ahead and try it with 3/2 real quick. The negative reciprocal for 3/2, you flip the fraction so we make it 2/3, and we change the sign so we make it negative. If it was already negative, you would make it positive. Okay, so if you have a line that has a slope of 3/2 and another line that has a slope of -3/2, then those two lines would be perpendicular to each other. That's how we tell. If you have two lines that have the same slope, they're parallel to each other. And if you have two lines that neither of those things are true, then they're not parallel and they're not perpendicular. Okay, so bringing it all together, the kind of problem that we want to be able to do is we want to be able to find the slope of some lines given some points, and then be able to decide if they are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So here's how we would go about that. First, if I wanted to know if line AB and CD are parallel, perpendicular, or neither, I would need to find the slope of both AB and CD. So first I'm going to do it with AB. So AB are these 2 points. I'm going to label them x1, y1, x2, y2. And so I'm going to go y2 minus y1. So in this case, it's 10 minus 6 on top. And then x2 minus x1 on the bottom, so 5 minus 2. Well, 10 minus 6 is 4. 5 minus 2 is 3. So the slope of AB is 4/3. So I'm going to leave that like that for a moment, and then I'm going to find the slope of CD. For CD, I need to relabel my points, x1, y1, x2, y2. So y2 minus y1 on top, so 9 minus 5, over x2 minus x1, so 9 minus 12. 9 minus 5 is 4. 9 minus 12 is -3. Okay. All right, well, that's a redundant step. Sorry, guys. Find the slope of AB and CD. We found the slope of AB and CD, so we don't need to find the slope of CD again. And now we want to compare the slopes. So the two slopes we had were 4/3 and -4/3. So we want to know if they're parallel. So to be parallel, they have to be the same. Are these two the same? Well, no, they're not the same. So we can move on to the next option. If they're perpendicular, they have to be negative reciprocals. So I'm going to take a moment and find the negative reciprocal of 4/3 real quick. So to find a negative reciprocal, I have to flip the fraction and change the sign. So flipping the fraction, I get 3/4. Changing the sign, I get -3/4. -3/4 is not the same as -4/3. So they're not negative reciprocals. So these two must be neither. They're not parallel because they're not the same. They're not perpendicular because they're not negative reciprocals. Okay. So that's how we would tell if lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. Your job now is to turn the page. And on the back, you can see this is your assignment. You've got 7 problems where you just have to find the slope between the 2 points. You've got 8 problems where you have to decide if line M and line N are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So you look at their 2 slopes and you decide if they're the same, if they're negative reciprocals, or if they're neither one of those things. And then you have 3 problems, like the example that we just did, where you have to find the slope of line AB, the slope of line CD, and then decide if they are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. Okay. So, if you run into any questions or anything, either talk amongst yourselves, figure it out with each other, or talk to me on Tuesday when we get back. Have a great day.